Hey, it's Brock here with Rock Hill Farms, and I'm back out here today to work on the Quonset hut again. There are a few specific things that I want to address today that maybe I haven't so far. First is just a basic step of building this that I've been skipping and I need to go back and get taken care of. The second thing is a part of the instructions that I don't really feel like I can comply with, and I'm trying to decide what is the right thing to do so that if people are watching my videos as reference to learn how to put up their Quonset hut, I want to address the right way to do this. That's the only way to say it, I guess. The third thing is potentially rigging up a boom pole or something to lift these arches, because a lot of people are telling me I should do that. So I want to talk about how I might do it and what challenges I see. So, step one is, what have I been forgetting? The part I had been forgetting to do was these L brackets right here that bolt each arch down to the block wall. And basically, this seems like such an easy step, and putting up the arches was a big challenge to overcome. So I was just so focused on that, I forgot that at the end of each arch, you're supposed to bolt one of these down. So the first two of these I can't put on because I've already concreted those in when I was worried about the windstorm. But all the other ones I can still go through and put on. And I really don't know if they're that critical, because you are going to concrete over the stud, the nut. It's going to hopefully bond to the arch. I guess that may be the concern, is maybe your concrete, while weighing down the track, might not be bonding to the arch. So it's going to be hard to show this, but I'll do the best I can to show you how these go on. You use a big self-tapping screw on one side and the existing concrete anchor on the other side. Here you can see how these go on, but I can't put this one on obviously because it's got to have the second panel first. There was a little bit of a gap in here. Hopefully it'll suck down. That's a really large self-tapping screw, and it's going through pretty thick metal, so let's see how it does with this impact. I'm glad that that worked. Wasn't too hard. From now on, we'll do these as we go. Right now I've got 4 more on this side, 5 on that side. I've got 9 more of those to do, and I'm actually going to add some Tapcons that aren't called for. I'll show you that real quick, and then we'll move on to the next step. I'm down here on the first 2 arches that already have concrete in them. And if you haven't been following along with the series, I'll catch you up real quick. Our first weekend working on this, we had kind of a struggle and we only got 2 arches put up. And then we had a massive windstorm coming in, and I was concerned we were going to lose those arches. So part of my solution, aside from tying it down in multiple places, was to go ahead and fill the concrete that isn't supposed to be done till the end. I went ahead and put that concrete in the first 2 arches to anchor everything down. That means that this bolt right here that should be tied into that little L bracket has a nut on the back, and it's got concrete poured around it. Another thing that was interesting is you have these extra holes because these panels are reversible. And I don't know if you can see it right here, but I put tape across that hole and then poured the concrete so none came out. Nothing was said in the instructions about how to do that. But since those holes are already there and I didn't anchor this right here the way I was supposed to, I figure I might as well anchor this panel to the concrete, and I'm going to use the Tapcons that I've been using on everything else. The next thing I want to talk about is, when should we tighten the bolts? And that's kind of a tricky subject. I've had conversations with other people who've built these, found out what they did, and that varies from person to person. I've looked at the instructions, I've watched videos, I talked to someone who travels the country putting these up professionally, and it's still hard to make a decision here. So let me tell you first what the instructions say. The instructions say, don't tighten any of the bolts till the building's done. That's problematic to me. If you look at the shape of the arch and you think about the middle being 16 feet, then you think each arch has 154 bolts that have to be tightened with a wrench on top and a driver on bottom, or driver on top, wrench on bottom, whichever way you do it. You have to have 2 people on each bolt, 154 bolts per arch, 4,466 bolts across 29 arches. And the guy who does this for a living says they just put in a few bolts per arch, stand up the whole building, then they have someone crawl across each arch putting bolts in. People have been on me for safety, but I don't think for the homeowner doing this themselves, it feels very safe to me to scale across the top of this. You could have some system with like a rope across the arch that you were tied off to or something, but there's no handles up there that you're grabbing as you're crawling up this. You could put a ladder against one side, get a certain distance up, and then you're gonna have to kind of crawl up it, work into these bolts. And let's say you had 3 bolts per arch. Let's say, okay, we can find a way to get up there and hit those, but you have 4,466 bolts to reach from the top while someone's also reaching them from the bottom at the same time. I can't see it. That seems impossible to me. So what I'm doing is tightening every bolt as I go. We don't tighten bolts up as we put the arches together, and we stand the arches up, then we start at each side, work to the middle, or sometimes we start at the middle and work out. We're trying different ways, see which way works better, and we tighten all the bolts as we go. And the only negative to that is sometimes as you're tightening one direction and coming to a point you've tightened in the other direction, or you're getting close to the end, whichever way you're doing it, you're gonna run into bolt holes that don't line up. The instructions say you use 2 punches, drift pins, tapered pins, put them in those holes and use it to align your holes. Well, that would work if you left everything loose like they tell you. But tightening as you go, you can't. When you're trying to align that and it's already tight, all you're doing is stretching out your bolt hole, giving it another excuse to leak. So what we've been doing, now most of these, the majority of the bolts, we're able to just run in. Normally what we do is the hole will be almost perfectly lined up. We put the bolt on a driver, run it through with the driver, put the nut on it, and we're done. Some of them we can't do that with, and we take a drill bit the same size as the bolt, run it through where those holes are misaligned, and kind of ream that out. Then we put a dab of caulking onto the bolt, and then run it through, and it's already got a rubber washer. My hope is that rubber washer and the caulking seal up that hole. The next thing I want to say is I appreciate everyone who's coming into the comments and giving me advice and telling me things that I could use to speed this process up or ways I can do it better. But I do want to make it clear, I'm not frustrated with the progress of this. I'm very satisfied with the way it's going and how I think it's going to turn out. It's taking longer than I thought it would, but that's all right. I've got time. I don't have anything that's urgently pressing me into the building. The only thing that makes this urgent for me is that I have some other things I'd like to do, and the weather will turn bad at some point. But I'm hoping to have a productive weekend. We have a 40% chance of rain on Sunday that could set us back. So after this video is done, I'm going to start building arches to try to improve our productivity for tomorrow. The last thing I want to talk about is all the advice for how I could use a boom pole to lift these arches. I think a system like that could definitely work. And most of the time, I'm all about trying different things. But in this, the last video where I mangled an arch was trying something different. And sometimes you spend all day trying to set up this new way and realize there's still a problem with it. There have been a lot of good suggestions where I think smart people are telling me what they would do, and what they would do would probably work. But when you talk about building something like a boom pole to lift this up, the point I want to stress is that lifting it isn't a big problem. It's not heavy. This whole arch weighs 240 pounds. The problem is that however you lift the middle, the ends go crazy. So, could you build something arch-shaped to go inside there and then lift? Yes, you could. Could you get multiple points of contact and a long reach and do it that way? Yes, you could. But my tractor reaches 6 foot. This needs to go up 16 foot. And if your device you're building goes above it to pull, which I think would be better, you're going to have something that's 15 foot long sticking out the end of this. And, you know, a lot of people suggested putting pallets on the forks, getting underneath it, and using the pallets to lift that up. Well, your stack of pallets has to be 10 foot tall. A 10 foot tall stack of pallets is going to be pretty rickety. You're going to have to like strap those pallets to each other or do something to get it to not fall over. Then you're going to have to very carefully, as you come up, you're going to have to creep forward at just the right angle so that you're pushing that up and it's not bending it. And as you do that, you're still going to have to manage the two sides that are wanting to flop around. The other problem with building a rig or an apparatus to put those up with is it prevents you from being able to build a bunch of arches and having them setting here, because then you can't drive your apparatus in here. So that's another thing to think about. So as far as lifting arches, I'm 50-50 on if I'm going to try to build something to do it with, because I know it would work, but is it worth it? Because when we build one of these, we're spending 40 minutes building an arch on the ground. We're spending an hour or a little bit more than an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes putting all the bolts in. Those are fixed times that we can only shorten by adding people. If we double the number of people, we have enough ways to access the top that we could cut that time in half. But actually standing up the arch the way we did on the weekend didn't take very long. We did it in maybe 5 minutes to stand up an arch. So that's not my pain point. Standing up the arches is not my pain point. If I had gotten that stood up with only 2 people, we still would have had to get someone else out here to help me take an hour and 15 minutes to put all the bolts in. The other solution is putting it up one piece at a time, and we have done that, but it's kind of awkward, you know, standing on something, holding that up and trying to get the bolts in. I think it works, but it's just one step below full arches and what I think is most efficient. But that's enough talking. Now I need to see how many arches I can get ready so that we can have a productive day tomorrow. I appreciate you taking time to watch. You'll see more of our videos right here, and I'll see you next time.